I call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We are in the Needham Town Hall Great Plain Room, and we are meeting in hybrid format. On Zoom, we have John Connolly, Barry Kaufman, Carly Hairston, and Carol Fischetti. Here in person, we have Jim Healy, we have Karen Calton, sorry. And we have Josh Levy as well as myself, Louise Miller. All right, so first, have a request for a reserve fund transfer from the Finance Committee. Everybody should have received materials from Louise regarding the reserve fund transfer. So over the last couple months, Louise and I worked primarily Louise on getting some quotes from some accounting firms to help us with the financing plan that was developed last year for the school building, buildings being proposed. So, and what we are looking at is someone who can help us work through the numbers, building scenarios, what if scenarios. And we ended up with talking to two firms, and this was the best offer. And Louise, if you want to talk a little bit more about the scope of work. You work very closely with this particular consultant and the other one as well to develop a scope of work that made sense. Well, you did most of the work.
Yes. We, working with Louise, developed a scope of work that basically is what the Finance Committee has been asking for probably over a year now.
Yeah.
Which is basically figuring out the debt capacity, figuring out what happens. Basically they would be reviewing how deeply was part of the problem with the, not problem, but why we chose this one, because he was more willing to focus on the financing plan without needing to dive too deeply into the rest of the town finances, but
and also provide us with an executive summary.
Yeah, so yeah, look at our stuff, provide an executive summary, and then figure out basically what the debt capacity is, what's available, and what projects are competing, and if you switch things around, and also just basically to develop a model that you guys can ask questions for, as Louise said, what ifs, different scenarios.
And Louise would be the contact person.
Yeah.
For the consultant. So as we develop questions, Louise would work with the consultant and then bring back responses to us.
And he will be available to come in. So probably come in, once or twice to speak directly with you guys.
So Louise, with the findings, like his, finished work product be something that we would then share with the town? Would we put it on our website? What would be?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, some of it will be a report and executive summary. Some of it will just be a model that, with what if scenarios. I don't know whether I don't think he'll probably prepare a report from that. It'd be more of a presentation to you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe slides or something like that.
Something that we can use also in our presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just say in August 2021, we had another reserve fund transfer to the school department for an extension study to look at alternate ways that might fit better within that financing plan. I think the output of that, what was missing is what this study will add, exactly how the numbers, the quantitative figures we're getting within the debt financing.
Yeah, and if it doesn't get to what you want, we'll get the numbers that you do want.
Yeah. Anybody have any further questions?
The time frame for this is?
So we gave him a mid-fall timeframe. We told him that the fall town meeting was sometime in October. Initially, we thought we would need some scenarios worked by then, but it looks like we're not going to, because of some developments we're going to talk about in a minute with respect to MSBA and school buildings. So it's going to be up to us. We want something we can use in discussions as the capital plan and the school building capital plan is put together. So, but he's available. he had no issues with a short timeline. He said he would be able to provide us whatever we needed within a short timeline. So if we have a longer timeline, that should work as well. So what, do you have something in mind, John?
No, I just, nothing,
Yeah,
but I just, I was curious.
yeah, so what I would propose is that we hire him, obviously. And if everybody could, if you have specific questions or specific scenarios that you think need to be looked at immediately, we can do that. And then, get him started, familiarize him with what the models look like right now. And then after we have more information about where it looks like the school building plan is going, we can start with what if scenarios. But I'm envisioning, the committee will have specific what if scenarios that we'd like to look at.
And then with the output of this study, we can then hopefully work with, I guess, the director of finance and the school departments
Yes?
to find a solution.
Yeah. I mean, part of this is we didn't want Dave to have to crunch through multiple scenarios. And he really doesn't work for us. So, this is gonna involve a certain number of hours of work, so. It makes more sense for us to hire someone to do it.
I move that the finance committee, approve the reserve fund transfer requesting another $20,000.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, I'll move to the vote. Jim?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
Barry?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Myself, I vote yes. So it's unanimous. Okay, update on school theater auditorium upgrades, potential future reserve fund transfer. So I asked the superintendent to be available to talk to us about a potential future reserve fund transfer and a quick update on what the work was that was done and why it was an emergency. If you don't mind giving us a 2-minute update on
Sure.
what it was that was done. And you also should have received something from Louise regarding this, or from Dan directly.
Dan, did you want me to bring in there yet?
No, it's okay. I think Anna's viewing from home, but that's okay. I mean, it's never good for the superintendent, for me in particular, to come to the finance committee without Ann. But,
This is just a discussion.
that's just the way, that's the way it is. I did send you a memo, and I have some hard copies as well. The big idea here is that we, in doing a study of lighting and sound system in the existing auditoriums, the consultant uncovered some areas that needs immediate attention for purposes of safety and some code work, particularly around the curtains that have to be certified, replaced and or certified in the auditoriums. And so working with the PPDC and with Barry Dulong and Karis, we worked on some of those items, some electrical work, for example, over the April vacation. But we decided that after I looked at the work, that it should be done before we have kids back in those spaces. And we use each one of those venues for classrooms. We teach every day in the Newman Auditorium on the stage. We use the high school auditorium for music and performing art lessons every day. And Pollard also uses it for music classes and assemblies. So we went ahead with the scope of the work. Of course, like many things, the bids came in higher than we thought. Although Ann told me this earlier today that we may be able to save a few dollars, maybe up to $40,000 from the original request of $240,000, but we're waiting for all the final pieces to come in. It looks like they will be, they're pretty much on schedule. We'll finish, by the first week of school, and then there'll be inspections to make sure everything's fine. And that's kind of where we are right now. In a very brief conversation with, Louise earlier this summer, thought, it would be wise just to alert the finance committee that we're paying for this, out of the FY24 appropriation. And would expect, once we have all the dollars and we know exactly what they are, that we would come back with a formal request. But, Louise counseled me that it'd be wise just for the finance committee to know and understand, so that there are no surprises later on. And then, of course, you consider that a reserve fund transfer request, at the appropriate time, and make a decision about what makes sense.
Okay, so as Josh pointed out, there was one reserve fund transfer for the schools, a year ago, no, 2 years ago. Which I had, forgotten, but the other reason I wanted to have this on the agenda today is, to kind of discuss the posture of the school department with respect to reserve fund transfers. This particular request, which due to the timing was not paid for with fiscal year 23 surplus, but the work couldn't start until July 1. So you had to expend fiscal year 24 funds prior to the start of the fiscal year. And so obviously your budget is not depleted at this point in time.
Right.
Yeah. And given the turn back, we don't know where you're going to be at the end of the year. But I do want to open it up for discussion regarding, like in the future, how perhaps something like this might be handled, especially since you just mentioned it was cross-disciplinary, cross-departmental. So I don't know if anybody else has some comments or questions.
And before
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go, just let me also hasten to add that, and I said this to Louise, I'll say to all of you, I wish in retrospect, I'd come to you earlier to say, this is where we're at, this is what's going on. There might have been a different discussion then about end of the year funds from FY23, but it didn't happen. And, usually we try to do that as we all work together, but it didn't happen in this circumstance, so.
Mhm. Yeah,
I asked, what's the relationship between the school department and the building maintenance division? Like, who's responsible for auditoriums?
The maintenance of the auditoriums, just like the school buildings, the, building maintenance takes care of maintaining them and cleaning them. If there are any major capital projects, like the lighting and sound study suggests that there are different things, areas we can go, that really becomes a capital project then. The PBBC potentially would be involved in. Barry's team does get involved in some, building projects, with, in conjunction with, Hank, for example, the lockers that are being refurbished at Pollard right now. So there is a little bit of crossover there, but a big project would be a capital project, likely under the purview of the PPPC. Regular routine maintenance is generally within, Barry's, wheelhouse.
So this is not routine, but also not a big project, is that?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The curtains, for example, they can have, depending on as I understand it, I'm not an expert on this, but depending on how long you've had them, can they be recertified, meaning coated again with fire retardant material, or do they have to be completely replaced? That just depends on the wear and tear of them over the course of, 5, 10, 15 years.
Thank you.
So,
my concerns were whether or not there was monies that were available for the year-end spend, but as I heard earlier, and I understand that you could not use those monies for this project. And then my only other concern is I'm old-fashioned. I don't think anyone has a financial exigency in August because I don't know what the year is going to look like. So I do agree that it's probably wise to see what happens. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you should change your programs and your strategies. But I think to the extent you might have some savings along the line, maybe we'll find out in February, March, or April, you know, how much of this money is needed. And of course, we now saw last year, last couple of years, there's been a turn back, so there might be an opportunity there also. So, I mean, I thank you for the information. It's good to know things as soon as they come up. So I appreciate that.
Anybody on Zoom have any comments or questions?
Yeah, real quick question, Eugene, just reading through the memos, are all those estimated expenses for future capital related to the auditorium's cumulative? In other words, because they add up to close to $10 million. I didn't add them all up.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about over the next few years?
Well, there's not even a plan for that. There haven't been a formal discussion really, about what we're going to do, because some of those figures in there are, you know, there are some that will meet some basic needs. There are some that will kind of take us to the next level. That's all part of a discussion that, you know, we just haven't had yet, with the school committee, with the finance committee, with town meeting, so.
But those are the numbers, I guess. That's.
Yeah. Those are the estimated, numbers that, Hugh Shep came up with, yeah.
John, did you?
Yeah, I just, Dan, am I correct that all this work has or will be completed in time for the beginning of school next week?
Yes, right now, we're on schedule to make that happen. There may have to be a couple inspections, and we'll work around those until, you know, they've certified the rigging is secure and the fire department says yes with the curtains, but I think we'll be in good shape for the start of the year.
Okay, and so and let's just say that the amount of it is 240,000, and I think you indicated it could be less, hopefully it would be. Those funds either have been or will be paid from FY24 school committee budget, and then we can track that budget through the first quarter, which ends at the end of September, or the second quarter, which ends at the end of December, and see that is an unexpected expense, but you might have savings on other things, and we can assess it on a quarterly basis as we move forward to decide when and if a reserve fund transfer might be appropriate. But it looks like it wouldn't be at least until the winter or spring to do that. Am I correct on that?
That would be my expectation, that, you know, it's up to the finance committee once we, but that would be what, you know, I was thinking would be likely.
Yeah.
In other words, we're going to continue school.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
that's what we're gonna do.
And the work's been done, the safety issues have been addressed, and the contractor or contractors have been paid. And then as far as shuffling within budgets, or that can be done by us at a later date, and we'll address it at that time.
Thank you.
That's all I
Carol?
had. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, did you have?
No, I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? So I just have two other points. One is, I think you had said previously that you thought maybe you were gonna use fiscal year 23 funds, but due to timing, that didn't happen. So not speaking about whether the work was needed or not, but I think that we do have to look at what the process is in which department this work is being done with and where the funds are coming from. Because being the school department, you have a lot of money that you can choose to spend in any way that you want. And I think we just need to be cautious of that going forward. And then the other thing is, given the amount of turn back, that we don't start using that money for projects that aren't otherwise in the capital plan or otherwise
Yeah,
need to be done, so.
Well, as I said, I wish in retrospect, both from the school committee and the finance committee, I'd been a little bit more proactive around this, and I apologize that I was not. You know, and I would not want to propose that we do a capital project with year-end funds. When I heard these are things that are critical, so we can open school, I felt differently about that, so. Anyhow, we kind of went around this a little, maybe backwards. I think the result will be good. I think it'll be appropriate. And working with you, I think we'll get there.
And everything is now here.
Yeah.
In a public meeting, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else from anyone? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Update on the Foster property purchase. Earlier today, Louise sent the draft and special town meeting warrant, which includes resolution with respect to the Foster property. The resolution is related to the update I received from the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I think it was about a week ago. Maybe. Regarding what had happened with the Foster property and where we are. So basically, if you recall, there was a warrant article for the town to purchase a certain number of acres for open space at the Foster property. The remainder of the property was going to be developed. The developer was going to develop 70 units and 5% would be for affordable housing. Apparently DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, which approves units for affordable housing, has not approved this project as an affordable housing project, which means that the developer cannot, as of right, develop a project that does not comply with zoning. So what the selectmen are thinking right now is that they would like a zoning amendment, which we don't know what it would look like. We have no information on that. Nothing's been drafted. And in preparation for that, they wanted to get a sense of town meeting through a resolution with respect to a zoning change. And it's also not clear whether it's just for that property or townwide. I think it's fortunate that we know this now, about 2 months before special town meeting. So what I was hoping is that we could discuss the Foster property purchase and perhaps put together a list of questions that we could then provide to the selectmen or any other comments at this point in time that we would be interested in providing to the selectmen well in advance of the drafting of a final warrant for special town meeting. So I will open up the discussion. If anybody would like to start, John?
Or I'll start. I don't understand this at all. We have a process that the planning board, if there is to be a change in any type of zoning in any place of the town, that they have a thorough process for planning for it, reviewing it, having public hearings on it, conducting traffic and other types of studies for it, and doing a measured, thoughtful approach in which neighbors are heard and everybody is heard, and then come forward or not come forward with a proposed zoning amendment that would be made to town meeting. That's how it's done. That's how it's always been done. I think it served our town well, and it makes, I just completely don't understand why that process should somehow not be followed here. And somehow we're putting something ahead of something, putting this non-binding resolution ahead of a process that is we've always followed and is something that served us well. And I don't see the need for this or why we would do it. And I'll stop at that. I have many more other things, but I'll stop at that.
Okay.
So,
I'm very disappointed in this proposal. One of the things that the Finance Committee discussed on multiple occasions with respect to this potential project was the fact that it seemed illogical and entirely inappropriate to suggest that this was an affordable housing initiative when it was going to provide us with, I think it was 4 or 5% of affordable housing, nowhere near where the customary units would be if you were talking about either units to be sold as ownership or units to be leased. Nowhere even near what the limits that the DHCD has set forth for many, many years. We raised that question. We raised the issue. And here it is, we find out that what we said was true. So now what does the select board decide to do? Well, let's figure out another way to help the developer. So I'm very disappointed in the manner in which they brought this forward. I'm disappointed that they still don't seem to care about the neighbors that came to the town meeting and showed very strong opposition to the project. I agree with John that there is a process that should be followed, has been followed in the past, doesn't appear to be followed now. The resolution, I think, is simply just another way to appease the developer. So I think there's a lot of issues with this proposal. And 2 months to me, it may sound like it's a lot of time. It's not, it really isn't. I'd love to know when they found this out. I've also requested of our secretary that we be given any memos, documents, emails, contracts, agreements, anything that discusses this situation with DHCD, either to them or from them to the town. And I'd like to see what the representations that were made, and I'd like to see what the DHCD said.
So,
Yes, Carol?
so I concur with John and Jim's perspectives, and Jim is quite correct that we said that for this to masquerade, I guess, as an affordable housing project was not in fact the case when it was originally conceived. But and I'm just going to make a statement now that really doesn't have anything to do with the economics of this transaction, but you know, for an entire year, actually 18 months, many members in town, of which I was part of that, to work on a housing plan, a long-term housing plan, and then to kind of, this just to me flies in the face of what they're trying to do with their housing plan, just so they can get that acreage of space. So I am not in favor of this at all.
Okay, John?
Can someone explain to me the value of a non-binding resolution? Why would that be proposed?
So, I'll take a first crack at it. The stated reason is that we do not want to spend town resources on pursuing a zoning change. They do, as John described the process, they involve a lot of work. And so we don't want to spend the time if it does not appear that town meeting would be favorable to such a zoning change. And I think the other reason is, and as much as it may sound cynical, because then there is a vote already on the record that there, you know, this was voted on favorably, even though details are not voted on favorably, the concept may be voted on favorably, and then that will be used to, you know, move forward any zoning change, and will be used again at town meeting. If someone else wants to provide more or has a different view, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Karen?
Are recorded roll call votes done at town meeting? And if so, how are they requested to be done?
So they can be requested, someone has to request within a certain period of time of the end of the taking of the vote.
Is it 10 town meeting
I
members
think
have to
it's,
stand
I
up?
think it is 10 town meeting, a town meeting member stands up and requests a roll call, and 10 town meeting members have to join in that request for the roll call. Yes.
Is there, forgive me, it's been a long day.
That's okay, I couldn't remember Karen's name.
How dare you? It seems like a feeling in the dark of kind of supposing why this was done through select board. Is there a mechanism by which we have delegates from finance committee meet with select board and just to kind of understand the bunnies and duckies here of how this came about, the whys, just so we're not supposing?
Yes, we can absolutely do that. And I think what we should do is put together a list of questions or comments, which we're eliciting today, and then invite the select board, members of the select board to a meeting in September, where we can discuss this further with them. But I think it is helpful for them to understand what the finance committee is thinking, because we were told that they did not know where the finance committee stood or what the finance committee thinking was until very late. And if you recall, this is an article that the finance committee voted unanimously to not support at town meeting. So I think it's important for us to provide feedback early.
So wait a second, Louise. Who said that they didn't know where the finance committee stood? You're talking about last October?
Yeah,
No, it was.
and
we
it was
were-
late in the process.
Well, how about the fact that we weren't given any information until the day before town meeting?
I agree. I agree. Yes. So that's why we're starting right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they hope that's gonna, that there's two issues here, right? There's the economics of the deal, which is what we opined on at before town meeting, that in the lack of process and getting us the information. And now, we're talking about a feedback on a process that, was sort of out of the norm, right? And one of the
Yes.
things actually has the planning board, has there been any input or comments from the planning board about this?
I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean there haven't been. I'm not aware of any right
That should be one of our questions.
Yeah.
now. Yeah. I think Louise has like 3 different comments already.
No, being somewhat cynical, my guess is, the town wants this land to be preserved, or the town meeting wants this land to be preserved. My guess is, the process be damned in a sense. The reality is, to accommodate more affordable housing, no developer's gonna step forward, right? So we're gonna go through the same arguments again, which is if we don't do this, then they're just gonna build McMansions, down there. He's gonna sell it to somebody else, and so
I
be
don't, I
it.
don't think there's anything wrong with mansions. We can all agree.
So they'll build what, Barry, 5 or 6 homes on,
I forget
Charles
what they can do by
I think
right.
that's about it, and
I think it was 5 or 6 homes.
and the pasture, the beloved pasture, I think it's wetlands. I'm not even sure you can develop down in that area.
But to your
not-
point, Carly, this is about ducks and bunnies, by the way.
The baby stuff sometimes for me, it's really helpful.
I mean, I'd like to add to our list of questions that Louise is going to artfully put together is what I've read is the developer here thinks it's economically unfeasible to build what they are planning on with more than 5 affordable units. I want to know, what is what is the exact analysis on that? Is it their analysis? And if so, have they provided it to us? Is it the town's analysis? And if so, please give it to us. But if someone's just saying it's not feasible for them, I'd like the backup for that and the proof for that.
John, and my guess is they're simply that the developer says that's the only way we'll go forward. It's not.
Well, then there should be another developer, because why would we be held hostage to something like that?
My guess is this is what it has been from the beginning. That was the original proposal. And they thought somehow if we get it approved at town meeting, we didn't need to have the approval of the state, which obviously they were wrong.
They knew that. They knew that. They knew they had to go to DHCD. So any suggestion that they didn't know that is false.
Okay, then how would they have thought that this would fly? I guess.
But wasn't this?
We have no idea, but we're just speculating.
Every project for affordable housing needs to go through DHCD to meet their standards and regulations. That's what they exist for.
And I have, other questions. Other questions with respect to the planning board is, to me, this sounds like, and it's not my area of expertise, but spot zoning.
Yeah.
And I just don't know whether it's even legal or appropriate, or how you can just sort of swoop in and say, just these parcels of land are going to be subject to this zoning change to our zoning bylaw. And I think it's important to, for town meeting, whether it's binding or non-binding, or even to vote on it, that information like that needs to be provided to us and to everyone at town meeting. Doesn't seem right that you can just pull out these parcels of land and say, we're going to do something specifically zoning for them that doesn't apply to the parcels that are adjoining to them or otherwise, that are all in that that R2 district, or whatever that the particular district there is.
Last year when we discussed at the town meeting, the focus from the proponents was that it was just about, we're talking about the acquisition of the land, and that the land use decisions would come later, that those discussions come later. I think that's what we're coming to discuss now, the land use decisions. And so I really hope that we're in a position to make an informed decision about the land use. Usually it goes to the planning board in their hearings and their studies sometimes to discuss that. I would ask the select board to provide similar information in this case, because otherwise any recommendation that we give or any recommendation that town meeting gives is going to be uninformed as to the details.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just follow up, Karen, if I can, just to what Josh said. And I have a pretty good memory, but I'm a little sketchy on this, but not only do we get information the day before the town meeting, or the 2 days before, that weekend, but I don't even believe that information was complete.
Correct.
And I believe, as Josh just said, but this is why I wanted to ask the group, that they basically said, well, we'll get back to you, but we just want you to vote in favor now. And so one of the questions I would have is, I want all written documentation by and between the town and the developer, between the date that we got that information right before the special town meeting, up to and including today's date.
So I also think the other issue we have is that there was a vote, as Josh just said, in favor of purchasing property, but it was all part of a transaction, half of which has now failed. So we can't move forward with that purchase. Right?
Well, we can't move forward with the purchase because there's no transaction.
Right, there is no transaction, so we now have an authorization for a transaction that can't move forward.
Encumbering funds that could be used for, I'm sorry.
Yes, absolutely, you're finishing the thought, John, go ahead. Oh, you muted
Oh, no, no,
yourself.
no, no, no.
You need to retell us.
How's that?
Perfect.
We have encumbered $2.5 million in funds that could not for other capital projects, whether it's the Mitchell School, the Pollard School, better or other drainage, you name it. All those things are, this $2.5 million as it's being held out there is not available to go towards that. Many of
Yes,
them.
so that's another comment back to the Board of Selectmen.
And I guess related to that, at what point would the select board consider rescinding that debt authorization if it does not pass in October?
And who's held accountable and how for making a decision such as that, where it's tying up funds for the town, like,
Town meeting voted for it, so I think we asked the question
okay,
the way Josh
okay.
phrased it. I think that's a good way to ask the question.
The select board is usually the party
That-
at town meeting that puts a warrant article on to rescind authorization.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have more comments or questions?
So, one comment I would have is it was suggested that the select board come in to discuss the proposed transaction and required zoning law changes. Will the planning board be in that same discussion? And
Yes, we
can
can
we
do
have
that.
the planning board be there as well? Because I
Yes,
think that
we
would
can
be
do.
helpful.
Yes,
Cause what if,
we'll work with them on scheduling something.
Okay.
cause would it be the planning board that will have to assert their jurisdiction over wanting to do the rezoning versus just allowing the select board to
The select-
usurp that power?
Select board can't do it. Planning board will have to do it.
Okay.
And I'd also ask for any communications, emails, or text messages between any member of the planning board, the select board, and the town manager's office on this issue.
Can that information be refused to be given?
No,
No, it's a public record. Okay. Anything else? All right. Are there any other updates that anyone has for the finance committee? So I just have one more, there was a meeting this morning, a chairs meeting this morning, where we were told that MSBA is going to be making a, visit to Needham. They are going to be visiting the Pollard School. MSBA's normal process is to identify a certain number of schools that have, school districts that have submitted a statement of interest to come out and visit, some of them, but they do not make decisions on whether they're inviting anyone into the process until their December meeting. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on that it looks like MSBA is looking at Pollard.
Did we file for both schools? Did they
Yes,
request?
we did. Yes, we did.
And so they choose which school they want to look at, or?
Yes, they, yeah. Any other finance committee updates? Okay, well, thank you.
Louise, just a sense of our upcoming meetings. Do you have that for us soon?
Yeah, we will have that for you. Other than the Foster property, I think, there may be one or two other articles that seem to be more meaty articles. I don't think we're gonna need more than one meeting per other than for the Foster property. So I'm thinking maybe 2 meetings in September and then, 2 in October before special town meeting. So a total of 4 meetings. But Louise will work on the schedule.
Yeah, so the sooner you can get that out, that would be appreciated on this end. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, Tim,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
I vote yes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.